Story 1. I started a new job at a right-away courier company. I hear that Karen is a masterful night shift logistics and dispatch operator, but some of the drivers don't like that she leaves them to work it out themselves. Darren is a day shift operator and loves that rather than doing a handover, Karen will say, "Don't worry, I'll work it out," because this means he gets to leave her little puzzles to solve. My shift is nearing its end when I'm asked by Darren to do a delivery far north side of the city. I live an hour southwest of the city, so express concern about clocking off so far from home. He tells me he'll try and find something for me and to call on my way back. He gives a big grin and says, "Sometimes dispatch doesn't answer when we're really busy, so just keep calling. If you don't get through, then stay on the clock until you either do or you get back to depot, and are advised that you can finish your shift." I took the hint and gave him a knowing nod. As I leave, I hear him saying to someone else, "Let's see if I can prepare something for Karen." Call me egotistical, but until the last word I thought he was talking about me. I drove an hour up north and finished my deliveries. I updated my driver status, sent the proper messages that I was vacant and heading back to depot, then called the operator. No answer. Darren had told me to keep calling, and I figured that if I didn't I'd get in trouble for driving without a job. Even though it was standard to return to depot, any driver could have figured out that their shift was over, but we are supposed to wait until we're told we can go home. So I maliciously complied, while making every effort to get through to dispatch. I realized that Karen was too busy to answer because Darren had left her a nice puzzle, and I smirked as I drove, because Darren kind of was talking about me when I left. Still, I had heard that Karen always solves the problems she's left, so I'm not worried for her. There's not much traffic heading back to the city at 5:20 p.m., so I'm making good time while pitying the cars deadlocked on the other side of the road. It should have cleared up going southwest by the time I get that far, an advantage to this extra hour of clock time. I check my GPS and note that if I were to go directly home instead of stopping by the depot, I could save myself 2 minutes. Having nothing to gain from clocking off, I keep calling every 5 minutes as I head to the depot. I'm only 4 minutes from the depot when Karen finally picks up. "Hey, this is dark snowy. I'm 4 minutes from depot. Is it too late to find a job going south or west?" "Who?" Karen asked, confused. She would have met with her night shift drivers, but not checked the status of the day shift drivers on their final runs. "Driver number X. Been trying to call you for an hour. You must be real busy." "Yeah. The day operators left me a mess." You could hear the pride in her voice. She was managing whatever Darren left her just fine. Returning to depot from north location, right round the corner. Karen pauses a moment, then says, "Okay." It was said to be calm, even sweet, okay, but I felt the curse of 1,000 suns behind it. The only thing I could think of at the time that she'd be so upset about me squeezing an extra hour's pay was that she must be a Karen. Still, I was only complying to policy, even if maliciously. I didn't want to leave it like that, so I offered, "I live southwest. Given things are busy, if you have any jobs that way, I might as well help." "That's okay. You can clock off now and head home." Not a trace of anger anymore. "I only have pickups, and they're in other areas." "Have a good one," I ended the call. I was actually a little confused that there were no south or west jobs. The ocean is east of the depot, so that's 2/3 of a huge area. It must be that Karen has set those jobs for later pickup times. Then it made sense. Drivers aren't sent jobs, which might confuse them. E.g., if they might try and pick things up in the wrong order, say, on the way to a drop-off. Darren had found pickup jobs for me and set them for reasonable pickup times. Reasonable for me. Karen must have sent all her drivers north, into gridlock traffic, in order to make all of the scheduled times. Meanwhile, I could have picked up every single one on my way back. Had she just recognized my existence or listened to the handover I'm certain Darren tried to give her. Karen could have started her night with a blank, but now she'd be swamped trying to make every delivery, less drivers, and there's still a lot of night shift deliveries due to hospitals. I actually felt bad for her as I realized that it was Darren who was the real master of malicious compliance in this story, and I played the role of a pawn. Having complied with both my requests as well as Karen's, with some degree of malice on both ends, I imagine Karen will be wondering all night if there were simpler solutions to Darren's previous puzzles that she was so proud of solving. Story 2. This happened in the early 2000s, and I'll need to tell a bit of a backstory. I do get to the point eventually, promise. I owned a '94 Saturn SC1 at the time. I loved the car, and I even had vanity plates of my favorite band. Anyway, one night I was going to meet a friend at IHOP for some coffee and conversation. It was kind of late, around 9 p.m., when I walked out into the parking lot of my apartment complex. My baby was gone. I immediately called 911 and reported it stolen. I was so shaken. Nothing like that had ever happened to me, and I honestly didn't know what to do. My friend made a detour from IHOP and came over to see if there was anything he could do to help. He couldn't, and I was so upset I'd become an irritable witch, so I asked him to go home. Besides, my brother was staying with me at the time, and he was better at providing comfort and a distraction anyway. A couple hours pass, and I get a call from a police station about half an hour away. They found my car. I could not believe it. We rushed to the station where we were escorted to a little room. They asked me a ton of questions, like, "Did you loan the car to anyone?" "No, I did not." "Was it unlocked?" "No." "Did you leave the keys in it?" "No." "Someone stole it." Dudes. After about an hour, they finally came in with a complaint for me to sign and led me to the garage, where my car was finished being processed. As we walked, the officer told me I was lucky. Very lucky. The person that took my car had stolen 3 other Saturns from my area. The last one he'd taken just before mine. He wrapped it around a stop sign, fled the scene, and took my car to get away. He also added that they found my car so quickly because the officer who saw it remembered my license plates from the alert that went out over the radio. Had I not had such distinct plates, the thief may have gotten away and/or totaled my car. I found my car in almost the same condition I'd left it in, except he'd pulled off the items I had hanging from the rear view mirror, had the nerve to change all my radio presets. But best of all, he was kind enough to fill my tank with a stolen credit card. Nice little bonus, to be honest. Forward a few weeks, and his first court date arrives. I didn't have to go because they weren't sure I'd be called as a witness, but I went anyway. I sat there patiently as they read off the charges. They were numerous. Multiple counts of auto theft, credit card fraud, leaving the scene of an accident, blah blah blah. When they asked how the defendant would plead, his father stood up and whined, "My son has ADHD. He doesn't know what he's doing is wrong. He has no control over his actions. He's innocent." The judge stared at him for a moment, then again asked how the defendant would plead. The kid said, "Not guilty." They set a new trial date and all that. The state prosecutor met me in the hallway and explained that they were going to try to make a deal. There probably wouldn't be a jury trial, but if there was, I'd be contacted. As he walked away, the father approached me. He looked desperate. He asked me to drop the charges because his son was mentally ill. I looked him straight in the eye and said, "No, I won't. Besides, mine isn't the only car he stole." Then turned to leave with him trailing behind me until I got on the elevator. The next letter I received from the courts told me the kid was sentenced to 7 years. P.S. The reason why he stole Saturns is because the older models have a flaw that makes them easy to steal. For obvious reasons, I'm not going to share that detail. Story 3. Electronic Benefits Transfer, EBT, is the electronic version of food stamps. It runs like a credit card, but can only be used for raw fresh foods. It can't be used at restaurants, with a few exceptions. Some pizza places or take and bake restaurants are allowed to take for uncooked foods prepared there. However, not all restaurants are equipped to accept this form of payment. The restaurants must register with the Washington State Department of Social and Health Services with proof they serve food that is covered by food stamps. After that, they must display prominently that they accept that form of payment. Our sub shop does cold cut meats and a few chicken steak hot options. And of course we offer to toast any sub at the customer's request. Our shop is a franchise, but we are each independently owned and operated. Our owner looked into signing up to accept EBT, but it cost a high fee every year to participate, and it only covered cold meats and untoasted subs. Basically, it was expensive and complicated. If we sold someone a cooked food item on EBT, we would get fined. Since our store was mostly manned by teens and not-so-bright people, our boss decided not to accept EBT as a payment option. I managed this location. I also programmed the new store computers. I knew we did not accept EBT. Every now and then someone would come in and ask about it, but I had to explain we did not take it. Normally this was accepted, and they just left or paid a different way. Not this time. This grouchy father came in with his 2 kids. He ordered several cold-cut subs with picky toppings, all while his kids were running around like lunatics. I think they were tying each other up with our retractable rope dividers, if I remember correctly. When the dad was done ordering, his whole order added up to $25 plus. Subs only, no chips, drinks, or cookies. I told him his total and asked how he wanted to pay. He holds out his EBT card. Me: "Sir, I'm sorry, but we don't accept EBT here." Him: "Yes, you do. I can buy raw food with it. Those subs aren't toasted, so they count." "I understand, sir, but our location hasn't signed up to accept EBT. I just used it at another store in this franchise a week ago." "Yes, some of our sister stores have signed up to take EBT. Our location has not." "Just run the card." "Sir, it's not going to work." "Run it." I only gave 4 payment options on my computer: cash, debit, credit, or gift card. I hit credit, just to humor him, and he runs his card. It pops up on the card reader as "payment not accepted right away." The man angrily swiped again. Still declined. Me: "Sir, it's not going to work. We don't accept EBT." "Yes, you do. You have to charge it as EBT, not credit." "We don't even have that option on our screen, sir. We accept cash, credit, debit, or gift cards." Him, yelling loudly now: "You do too accept EBT. I used it at another store weeks ago. I don't have cash or money on my debit card. That's why I'm using my EBT. Now charge it. My kids are hungry." His kids, and a couple customers who were already in the store, are staring at him now. I once again inform him we don't take EBT. "So now what am I supposed to do? Do you want my family to go hungry?" He turns to his kids: "This lady wants you to starve." We go back and forth a bit with me, asking if he wants to try a credit card, does he want to remove a few subs from his order to lower his cost, etc. He just keeps yelling, calling me a witch who wants to make his kids starve. After a few, he tries to snatch the bag of subs off the counter. I pull it away from him and put it on the counter behind me. He storms out with his kids, yelling a final, "I'm going to call your manager and get you fired. I'll tell all my other friends never to shop here." On his way out, he took a picture of our accepted forms of payment, which did not include EBT. Was a weird day. Story 4. Entitled Mother tried to take my friend's truck. Stabbed him with a pocket knife when told no. Cops took her away kicking and screaming. Not my story, but that of a friend who authorized me to post it here when I asked him. For starters, my friend owns a Blues 05 Dodge Ram 1500. It's not the most reliable model of truck, but he's kept it in good shape and left it looking stock, save for some aftermarket alloy wheels. He tells me he was willed the truck from his grandfather when he passed away 7 years ago. Caleb isn't a mechanic, but learned how to do a lot of work on this truck himself. I even helped him redo the undercoating on it and buff polish the paint. This story takes place around 3 years ago. My friend tells me this was really the one and only time he's dealt with an entitled parent. He described her as looking like a teapot, short and stout. So from this point on, the entitled mother will be referred to as Teapot. For the sake of giving him a name, my friend in this story will be referred to as Caleb. Rewind 3 years and our story begins at a local supermarket whose name rhymes with Stallmart. Caleb always goes out of his way to try and get as close to a parking space to the store as possible. And on this day, he managed to do so. He went in and did the bulk of his food shopping for the next couple of weeks, and everything seemed fine. But of course, now comes the enter Karen part of this story. Caleb was pushing his cart out when he saw an older woman trying to force open the rear door of the canopy on his truck, which is odd because you could clearly see inside that he didn't really have anything of value in it other than a few tools. She didn't seem to notice him until he was super close and said to her, "Excuse me, what are you doing?" Teapot jumped back like lightning struck, but then quickly started playing the little old lady card. Though this woman was about 50 tops, she put her hand over her heart and said in an over-exaggerated way, "Oh dear, you shouldn't sneak up on people like that, young man." Caleb, "Yeah, sure. What are you doing?" Teapot, "I was just trying to get in my truck. I locked my keys inside by mistake and can't get in." Lady, "That's not your truck." "Yes, it is. I just got it last year." "Oh, really? Then what model year is it?" "It's, a 2010. Just look at how clean and new it looks." "No, lady, it's an 05. I know this because it's my truck." Caleb then produced the keys and pressed the button on the fob to unlock the door. He said Teapot first went white, then red with anger. It's pretty much full stereotypical Karen after this. "Listen here, you little jerk. You don't deserve a truck this nice. It'd be a lot better for someone like my son. He's a local college student, you know, and he needs a nice shiny vehicle like this to get around in." "Are you loopy, lady? My truck isn't for sale, and even if it was, how much would you give me for it?" Teapot started to look smug and pulled a checkbook from her purse. "I can give you $1,500 for it right now." Caleb facepalmed so hard he said he hurt his nose. "Lady, my truck is worth several times that, and I've personally kept up with its maintenance for several years. There's no way I'd take $1,500 for it. Plus, there's no way I'd hand over the title unless I was paid with cash. I don't trust checks." Teapot moved to get up in his face, which was funny because he was a full foot taller than her. She was about to speak when Caleb silenced her with a loud, "Don't even think about it, lady. My truck isn't yours for the taking. It never will be. Now leave me alone so I can unload my groceries in peace and go home." He then did his best to try and ignore Teapot as she began screaming and saying she'd call the police. Caleb then just yelled back, "Call them then?" And she actually did. She pulled out an old flip phone and began fake crying while speaking with a person on the other end. Caleb finished loading his groceries and locked the truck because he wasn't about to drive off with police on their way. When the police arrived, Teapot actually flopped down onto the ground and started fake crying like a baby while flailing her arms and legs around and pointing at Caleb screaming, "He knocked me to the ground and stole my truck. And then he said he'd come back later and hurt my family. Arrest him now." The 2 police officers that had shown up were an older man with a mustache and a younger one that Caleb said he guessed was a rookie, because the younger cop was immediately getting ready to aim his taser, when the older one stopped him so they could assess the situation first. Caleb raised both hands and calmly stated that nothing Teapot said was true, and that she'd been harassing him since he caught her trying to break into his truck. Teapot, while still having a tantrum on the ground, yelled, "He's lying. Arrest him." The rookie officer spoke with Teapot while the mustached one spoke with Caleb. Since he was so close to the store, Caleb stated that he bet that the security cameras picked up the whole thing. It was at that point that Teapot gave up on her act and started screaming like a banshee, while running at Caleb with a small pocket knife she pulled from her purse. Caleb tried to back away and held his hands up, and the knife went right through his left palm, which he described to me as one of the most painful things he'd ever felt. She pulled the knife out and tried to stab him again, when the rookie tackled her to the ground and tased her. Teapot flailed around and started screaming and sobbing like a baby. When she finally stopped moving, the mustached officer cuffed her while the rookie called for an ambulance. Teapot was loaded into the police cruiser kicking and screaming, "Help! Police brutality! Someone help me!" Caleb was taken to the hospital to tend to the stab wound in his hand. Turns out, he was incredibly lucky as the knife had gone right between the bones and not damaged any tendons. Later in court, Teapot actually tried to plead not guilty, but the evidence against her was overwhelming, and she was charged with attempted murder, attempted grand theft auto, and a few other things. The judge sentenced her to be put in a mental facility because she clearly was not well. As soon as that happened, Teapot flipped out and began trying to charge at the judge. But she was quickly grabbed by the guards and hauled out of the courtroom. Also during the trial, Caleb met Teapot's son. Turns out, he'd gone no contact with her as soon as he was old enough to move out, because she was the most controlling and overbearing mother you could imagine. And ever since then, she'd been trying to show up at his apartment and bring him nice things he suspected she'd stolen just to try and get him to talk to her. Guess she figured Caleb's truck would have gotten her back in her son's good graces or something. This story is getting written now because Caleb decided to check up on Teapot by searching her name online. She's still at the mental facility, and he found out from her son through social media that she looks likely to be staying there for quite some time to come. Story 5. So I got 2 today. Not nearly as dramatic as my previous "I don't work here" lady experience, but still rude, annoying, and stupid. Also, major rambling warning. Can't help myself. No brain left. For context, I'm reasonably unconventional appearance-wise. Very multicolored hair, multiple tattoos and facial piercings, generally a bit scruffy looking. I definitely rock a look I'd be unlikely to get away with working retail, and today was wearing a black t-shirt, WTNV again, with a pair of tie-dyed pants so baggy that they fit my fat arse with room for a few friends and maybe a surfboard. Honestly, no part of these pants aside from the waistband actually touches my skin, and I love them beyond all reason, fashion crime aside. I work in a school for very disadvantaged teenagers, and stupidly volunteered to do Christmas for them. Which means a present for everyone enrolled, 26 girls, 36 boys, and food hampers for the families who otherwise won't have anything nice to eat over the holidays, about 30. I had 4 hours to get this done on a budget, and I'm exhausted and traumatized and very, very underpaid. Thanks so very much. For gifts, I decided on perfumes and colognes. As incredible as I like to pretend to be sometimes, I doubted my ability to find something personal for all 62 kids in a single shopping trip, and it's a luxury they wouldn't otherwise be able to enjoy. So off to a major discount chemist I go. It was hell. There were more people in this pharmacy than I thought existed in my entire city, and of course all of them are in the perfume section. People are literally climbing over each other. It looked like the videos I've seen of Black Friday sales in America. Seriously, how do you do that to yourselves? Every year, I actually turned on my heel and walked back out to the van, but reminded myself it's for the kids several thousand times before diving back in. 40 minutes and some mild bruising later, I had 4 baskets full of perfume and cologne and was carefully making my way towards the end of the queue, approx 3.5 kilometers from the checkout, when my shoulder was firmly tapped. I looked over to see a total Karen in 3-for jeans, a pastel blouse, and the "I want to speak to the manager" haircut. Just a complete walking meme. Yes? I need one of those. She pointed to one of the perfumes in my topmost basket. They were over in the perfume section, but I'm pretty sure I got the last one. I turned and kept maneuvering my tower of baskets towards the queue. She stepped around me, nearly knocking over my baskets, and blocked the aisle. Staff can't just buy everything on sale before customers. Put them back. She shouted the last bit. Who shouts? I have never ever needed to shout. The hell? I don't work here. I'm shopping. You're in my way. Move. It's hot. I'm already exhausted. I'm trying to do maths in my head. Do not mess with me." She reached into my basket and grabbed the perfume she wanted. My jaw hit the floor, and I genuinely had no idea how to respond. I wasn't going to fight a middle-aged woman for a $15 bottle of perfume. My other options didn't sound great either. Fight my way back to the front of the store with my leaning tower of baskets and search for another perfume in the right price range, or for a staff member to help me. So I just stared at her, completely baffled as to what was happening right that moment, and she stared back, as if daring me to do something. Thankfully, she had drawn the attention of a security guard, who took back the perfume, told her off for harassing customers, and told her to leave. Lovely security guard also took my baskets and put them behind the counter so I could join the queue and pay for them when I got to the front. Bless him. I congratulated myself for surviving another "I don't work here lady" encounter and coming in under budget, and moved on to the next part of my shopping hell: hampers. This required a trip to a major supermarket, and I knew I'd need about 4 trolleys worth of groceries. Inspired by a lovely security guard, I spoke to customer service when I got there, explained what I was doing, and they allowed me to bring each trolley to the customer service desk when it was full so I could continue shopping and pay all at once at the end. They also offered to help me get it all out to the van. Lovely customer service. I was halfway through trolley #3 when I hear an "excuse me." I turned around, thinking, "Oh no, not again, go away Karen," to see a perfectly nice-looking little old lady. Phew. Where will I find baking soda? Sorry, no idea. Baking soda was not on my list. And the only thing that mattered in that moment was my list, written in purple texta, because someone at my work must eat gyros, on the back of a reading comprehension worksheet, crumpled and sweaty and nearly unreadable. "What do you mean you have no idea? You're doing the shelves." She gestured around me, my trolley, my list, and the near-empty shelf behind me. If by doing the shelves, she means removing 30 of everything from them, then sure. I was doing the shelves. I don't usually shop here. Ask up the front. I didn't think it was necessary to tell her that I didn't work there. I wasn't wearing red, and my pants can be seen from space, so even if her eyesight wasn't great, I wasn't in anything approaching a uniform, unless stoners have uniforms now. I wasn't even close to done for the day. I still had shopping to do. Then I had to get it all back to campus, unpack it, split it out into hampers and package it back up, wrap 62 presents, and write tags and cards for all of it. I had less than 2 hours left. I was running on pure adrenaline and a constant mantra of "it's for the kids." Which is, of course, when the nice little old lady revealed herself to be nothing more than a retired Karen and started screeching about bad service and calling managers. I couldn't even muster the care to respond. I just kept wandering down the aisles, periodically emptying shelves into my trolley. She followed me, screeching, for 2 whole aisles. Unfortunately for her, I work with teenagers, and there's no amount of noise I can't drown out. She was at the customer service desk when I went to deposit trolley #3, complaining about the rude staff member that wouldn't help her find baking soda. The baffled employee at the service desk asked the security guard to escort her out because she was getting too angry and loud. So my score is getting 2 Karens kicked out in one day. Story 6. So, this happened this past weekend, and I'm still kinda shaking my head at this one. I'm an amateur competitive shooter. I compete in several disciplines, but by far my favorite is cowboy action shooting. It's time, high speed, and a lot of fun. Everyone dresses up as cowboys girls, uses period weapons, and you pick your own cowboy name. That's right, we're nerds with guns. The best part about the community is that almost everyone tries to give back in some way. The way I choose is to dress up and donate my time telling folktales at the local library, minus the firearms, of course. Several of the other club members will attend heritage days, fairs, and the like. Last week, I got a call from our club president. He told me that some of the members would be performing at a heritage festival a couple of counties over from me, and he asked me if I'd pitch in and help. I tell him that I'd love to and ask for the details. He gives me all the information, and asks me to do him a favor. He wants me to bring the big gun. I laugh and tell him I'd be happy to. The big gun is my all-time favorite firearm, an 1874 Sharps Quigley, so named because it was used in the Tom Selleck movie Quigley Down Under. I won't go into technical specs, but she's a pig, roughly 4 foot long and weighing somewhere around 13 pounds. She's even made by the same company that made the rifles for the movie. She is too big, too heavy, too expensive, and I love her. Her name is Cora. If you saw the movie, you'll get it. So, I show up on Saturday, drag all my stuff to the booth, and basically stand around looking like a knockoff Tom Selleck. Now, there are some strict precautions taken when we do events like this. No live ammunition anywhere on site. We even went through our vehicles beforehand to make sure we didn't leave any in there by mistake. All weapons are transported in securely locked, hard-sided cases, and whenever they are removed, they have trigger locks on them. The club members that are performing will have blank rounds for fake gun fights, but those are kept in separate locked containers. While I'm standing around the booth, I answer any questions people may have. Yes, it's from that movie. Yes, it will shoot that far. No, I don't think I could do it. As this is going on, I see a boy, maybe 15, 16 years old, studying my rifle pretty intently. I ask him if he has any questions, and he proceeds to rattle off all the specs of the rifle to me. I'm impressed, and tell him that he really knows his stuff. He tells me that Quigley was his grandfather's favorite movie, and that he used to watch it with him before he died. We talk about the movie, and how awesome Alan Rickman was before he asks if he can hold the rifle. I tell him that I don't have a problem with it if he gets his parents to come over and give their permission. The kid runs off, and after a bit he returns with his father. I knew I was in for a rough time when the first words out of his mouth were, "Why won't you let my son touch the gun?" I could tell that this was typical behavior by the way that the kid turned bright red and stared at the ground. All the other club members had gone off for a performance, so I was alone at the booth with the kid and this idiot. I told the man, "Sir, I have no problem with him touching the rifle, I just want your permission first. He's a minor, and I didn't think it was a good idea to hand a firearm to him without your consent." The guy starts to yell at me, saying, "I don't see what the big fing deal is, it's not fing loaded." I respond with, "I take it he has permission." Of course he does. I tell the boy to go ahead. His face lights up as he hefts the rifle, grinning from ear to ear. He asks if he can take a picture, and I agree. I even took my cartridge belt off and let him wear it. Just dummy rounds. Only bullet and casing, no primer or powder. The kid thanks me and starts to walk off before his father stops him. "Do you want to play with any of these other guns?" I inform the father that I don't own those weapons, but he's welcome to wait and ask the people who do. He starts yelling about how he doesn't need permission and how this is a free country and that he can do what he wants. All this yelling gets the attention of the deputies that are patrolling the fairgrounds. A couple of them walk over and tell him that if he doesn't calm down that he will be asked to leave. He quickly tells his son that they're leaving, but before they walk away, I call out to him. I pull one of the dummy rounds out of my belt and ask, "Can he have this?" He mumbled something about not caring, so I handed it to his son. I tell the boy what it is, and that he can make a keychain or something out of it. I also handed him a club card with my email written on the back. I said, "If you can get permission from another guardian, who's willing to bring you out and sign some paperwork, let me know, and you can come shoot a match with us. I'll even bring Cora." I received an email from his mother this evening, and they'll both be joining us for a match in a couple weeks. Edit. To give a little more detail. The mother seemed very polite in her email. She was apologetic for the actions of her ex-husband, and thanked me for being kind to her son. Turns out that it was her father that the boy used to watch the movie with, and her ex is very resentful of anyone in her family. She apparently was made to watch it as well by her father when she was younger, so she is aware of the significance. The son was spending time with his father during the summer and had begged him to take him to the festival. He had heard that there were going to be cowboy performances there, and he wanted to see them. Seems that his grandfather had been a fan of all westerns, not just Quigley, and he had shared that love with his grandson. The grandfather passed away last year, and the kid took it hard. I am a certified firearms instructor and first responder. I usually serve as safety officer of the day for whichever club I'm shooting at, and carry a trauma bag in my truck whenever I go to the range.